In the 16 to 1800s, there was a debate raging in Europe. Spain had located Ophir and Tarshish in the Philippines, with overwhelming proof, and the Brits went kicking and screaming, trying to prove it wrong. They just could not accept it. Let's look at some of their key elements and test them to see which holds water. Now, we could spend hours on this as a topic. We won't. This will be a brief video. We call this the British deception because they lost that debate, though they did win the war with Spain through the U.S. in the late 1800s when the debate disappeared and Philippine history with it was all but erased to accommodate their view. They just wouldn't have it. But no matter, that history is still here, and we've already proven this is the Philippines. Welcome to 100 Clues. The Philippines is the ancient land of gold, known as Ophir in the Bible and history. No, it's no fable, and this has already been proven in full in the God Culture's Solomon's Gold series. At the request of many viewers, we pulled out 100 compelling clues, really proofs or evidences, from this research in which we will highlight briefs of the most compelling points, and yes, there are over 100. These videos are for those who have not had time to watch Solomon's Gold series. We know it's long, and make it easy to share to friends and family, especially skeptics. This brief video cannot replace that 50 video series packed with facts and evidence, nor prove the way that it does, but this will be effective nonetheless. So go there for full evidence. But now, part 32 of our series 100 Clues, the Philippines is Ophir, one clue at a time. Again, we could spend hours on this topic, but we'll pack it into the normal length, hopefully. We'll try hard. British explorer Sebastian Cabot was then hired by Spain to discover Moluccas, or Malaysia. Tarshish, Ophir, Sipangu, which is traditionally seen as Japan, though there is an argument out there for that being the Philippines. We have not been able to prove that as of yet, though. And Cathay, or China. This was written into his contract by the King of Spain, who knew his nation, nor Britain, was Tarshish or Ophir, as all these places are in the far east. So really, end of discussion for Britain's claim of Tarshish, as you have a British explorer and Spanish king, both admitting such. But look at the order from south to north, really. It starts with Moluccas, or Malaysia, and, oops, not Ophir or Tarshish, is it? Nope. North of that would be Mindanao, Tarshish, which we found. Then north of that would be Ophir, or Luzon, Philippines. Sipangu is again said to be Japan, and we'll stick with that for now. And it is north of Ophir, Philippines, and China on the same plane north. So it fits perfectly, and obviously Malaysia cannot be Ophir, and neither can Japan be Tarshish, nor China. Neither fits. Again, Britain committed fraud, really, in renaming the local Gunung Ledang as Mount Ophir out of the blue in 1801. 300 years almost into the debate, which really they had already lost. And by the way, the Portuguese, Italians, French, Germans, Dutch, etc., all knew Spain found Ophir and Tarshish. But Britain did not wish to accept it. No. In 1699, in fact, the debate was so heated that Carreri said in his journal of his visit to the Philippines in Manila, he mentions that he would not go into the argument raging in Europe at that time over whether the Philippines was originally populated by the descendants of biblical Tarshish. Yeah, and Ophir. He was an Italian writer and somewhat explorer and visited Manila for about a month. Many credit Samuel Purchas with laying down the British argument. And he's extremely wordy, so we can't cover it all, but we'll break it down some in this video, enough that you can get the idea. He writes, "Thus the author, and thus antiquity commends navigation, and no less," this is in Old English, so if you use the V and so on and so forth, but we'll just read it in modern English. "And no less the ends which moved Solomon thereto, which were to get gold, silver, ivory, precious wood and stones, and other rarities, which gave such luster to his state." Later he says, "To make a monopoly of the ocean, as if the whole East had been created for Ezion Geber," in other words, Solomon's port and directions. Now, here's what he admits right off the cuff. He admits Britain is neither Ophir nor Tarshish. Oh, sorry. As he says, Solomon's navy headed east from the Red Sea. And that is exactly what we say and prove. He never actually tests the Philippines as Ophir, nor attempts to disprove it in all of his ramblings. In fact, it's hard to find a case from Britain where anyone actually has ever done so, because they never proved it wrong because they cannot. He ignores it completely and just goes on with this scholar, that scholar, this scholar, that scholar, this etymology, that etymology, this etymology. It's the name game, just like we've said many times before. All his long discourse, etymologies, pretty much the quotes from scholars. Yeah, that's thousands of years old and a really, really poor logic. Sounds like. Yeah, sounds like. You got anything else? No, but that's compelling, right? No, it's not. Hello. So try this on. Let's apply some so-called scholarly logic. Well, Christopher Columbus, well, he wasn't really a man, you know. You don't say. Yeah, I noticed the other day that there was a cumulonimbus cloud in the sky. And I realized, it struck me that it's awfully similar to Columbus. See, he wasn't actually a human explorer. No! Columbus was a cloud. Yep. That would be absolute stupid logic, right? It sure would. Am I oversimplifying? Perhaps. Don't really care. Now, go read all their stuff, though, with that in mind, and you will see that same logic over and over, and it's stretched even further than I just applied Columbus. Again, very ignorantly, it doesn't make sense. We would agree. It's fine to explore etymologies, and we do as well, but one must have much more than that to draw a conclusion. Otherwise, you have nothing. And these scholars, nothing. You read what this guy says, and it's a whole bunch of nothing. Now, he believes Tarshish, it appears, if I'm understanding him properly, again, he says so much, and it's all in Old English, but I think we got it, is most likely, Peru. But not Ophir. Ophir, in his opinion, is the British part, of course, just the British, no other part, just the British part of the East Indies and India. Now, we will obliterate India and a video on its own, because that one will really, really break down. But Peru we will deal with here in this video. Nevertheless, if Peru is Tarshish, well, then he's saying it's not Britain, is it? And if India or the Indies, or both, or whichever, are Ophir, well, that's not Britain either. And oh, by the way, does he even consider that maybe, just maybe, the Philippines used to be considered part of the Indies in ancient references? Oh, indeed it does. Well, there's an awful lot he doesn't consider, and we have already laid that case before you in the previous 30 videos, really. Let's remember two huge disclaimers, however. Purchas never left England. Never. And, well, he was not an explorer. And he never traveled to either of these lands. So all of his knowledge is based on hearsay and things that he's read, And that's why he's just, this scholar says, this scholar says, this scholar says, this scholar says, a whole bunch of scholars that line up who also had never been to Ophir and Tarshish, never been to the Philippines. Oh yeah, and, well, he was paid by the East India Company to write this book. But there could be no agenda to that. Of course not. If it sounds familiar, remember the East India Company was founded by the Rothschilds, who enter this narrative often even in modern times, but we'll get to that in time. Sir Francis Bacon was obsessed with the Americas, which he called the New Atlantis. Now you do realize Atlantis was a Nephilim kingdom of giants from before the flood that almost destroyed the entire world, devouring mankind and modifying them, including plants and animals. That's according to the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Enoch, and even Genesis 6 when you read it properly, especially in the Hebrew. Many scholars do not, and even seminaries to this day do miss this, which is so blatantly obvious, but we're not going to cover it here. The golden age of our almost extinction. Yet there are many who beg for the return of that evil error, which Yahuwah saved us from by replenishing the earth with the flood. Watch our flood series for that. Anyway, Bacon was head of Freemasonry, and his fellow Freemason wrote of Ophir in Peru, as Bacon believed. It's no coincidence the whole 2 continents are named after the god he experienced there in Peru, Amaruca, which does not even tie to Amerigo Vespucci, by the way. The plumed serpent, the god of the Americas, and they're named after him even still. Nice. Did they ever produce a shred of evidence to this tune? Well, we can't see any anywhere. But why bother with that? Just 2 Englishmen telling us we have to believe them because, well, they said so. Around 1966, American explorer Jean Savoy found 3 stone tablets in the mountains of Peru, and these are greatly touted as evidence Peru is Ophir. Well, they claim these tablets are written in ancient Hebrew or Phoenician, dating back to the era of Solomon. Yet, no one seems to produce these tablets to study. Can't find a photo anywhere of them and their interpretation, except for they tell us what they say. But we like to see it for ourselves. We'd like to see whether it's really truly ancient Hebrew or ancient Phoenician. Well, Savoy's own followers admit that the translation of these tablets is problematic. But let's look at what they think it might say. Maybe. We have sailed across the big ocean. Which one? In this case, the Atlantic. And then traveled up this huge river, the Amazon. And we then traded for gold. Does it say how much gold? No, it doesn't say that, does it? Does it say the gold of Ophir? Oops, that's missing. It's not there. How about Tarshish, Sheba, Havilah, anything? Got anything? Nothing. With these people and are going back to our home. That's it. Or words to that effect. So they write. Does this say it's Ophir? No. Tarshish, Sheba? Nope. In fact, Solomon's navy headed east from the Red Sea, so if they made it to Peru by traveling up the Amazon, they would have had to have crossed the Atlantic from the east of the continent instead, because there is no river connected to the Amazon from the Pacific. Very hard to get to that way. And certainly, you don't travel that way. Oops. There's gold all over the world. It's no surprise that gold is found, and it doesn't make any land where gold is found Ophir. It's meaningless unless you can prove that the gold is so overwhelming abundant. Peru is not the ancient land of gold. In fact, even today, it has gold, but no, the Philippines has far more. It far outranks Peru in untapped gold reserves in the ground as number 2 on all of Earth in its measly little 300,000 square kilometers, as opposed to Peru being several times larger. It's really nonsense. Whoever this was, and maybe it was even Phoenicians, we'll give them that. Have no problem with that. If this writing is actually ancient Phoenician, okay, the Phoenicians made it there from the east, but not from Solomon's navy on the Red Sea in the wrong direction, but from their ports on the Mediterranean, as the Phoenicians had ports in Britain and Spain at that point in history in which they traded. So it is possible, though, not actually characteristic of their conservative boating practices, which we already covered. But no matter, if these tablets are real, and if they say this, it still says nothing. It is not evidence for Ophir in any sense. So you take that versus the overwhelming pile of evidence of the Philippines, which could go to the moon and back, and you have no comparison. Even Samuel Purchas agrees. He says in his time Peru had no elephants, nor ivory source, nor peacocks, disqualifying Peru as Ophir and Tarshish anyway. And in fact, the 3-year journey of Scripture round trip would be doubled to go to Peru that way. Ivory, X. Peacocks, X. Red sandalwood or almug, X. Doesn't fit. In fact, this would add 3 more years to the journey. So 6 years, not 3 years, round trip. And the conservative Phoenicians crossed the Pacific Ocean on their first trip to Ophir and Tarshish, another 9,700 miles. That's nonsense. Again, Purchas for Britain seems to claim Ophir in India and Tarshish all the way in Peru, 9,700 miles away. Doesn't work. No way. Not logical. Add to that South America, as Africa are in Ham's territory, and Ophir and Sheba are from Shem. Now Tarshish is from Japheth, but he received a piece of their land, which they could not give him from Ham's territory, but had to be from Shem's, which they did. Now why does Britain want to be Tarshish anyway? In backwards reasoning to justify their claim that they ushered in the lost tribes of Israel in 1917 when they conquered Palestine, which they had no right to do, and gave that land to the Ashkenazi Rothschilds that same year in the Balfour Declaration. Look it up, and you'll see interviews from the Rothschilds themselves admitting this actually happened. However, we unravel that in our Lost Tribes series, and we'll touch on it later even in the series a little. The Lost Tribes have not and could not have returned according to Scripture, but a topic for another day. This prophecy belongs to the land which rises up in the last days against Gog of Magog and the New World Order, and that is the Philippines, not Britain, which Britain is actually part of the seat of Gog's power, the prince demon who attacked Israel. And they attacked Israel in 1917 to start, and then again in the 1940s throughout, 1948 to 1952 especially. Basically, Meshech and Tubal, Western and Central Europe. Talk about bizarro world, for they are the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Yahudim and are not, but do lie indeed. Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. We should all know that scripture. So Britain is not only a big red X for Tarshish and Ophir, but also in finding those lands as well. We'll obliterate India's claims soon, and Peru is quite the misfit. We already showed you in pretty much every way. They're too far, they don't have the resources, and the stone tablets are impertinent to the conversation. Another irresponsible claim of modern science, never proven, and never bothered to follow up on, and ridiculous in scope, especially since they say nothing at all. As we keep saying and supporting over and over again, there is no debating the Philippines is the land of gold in all of history. It is time this knowledge be restored. For those about to comment in ignorance, yep, we always get them, we dare you to watch Solomon's Gold series by The God Culture, the original channel, to prove the Philippines is in fact Ophir and the Garden of Eden. Even here we are breaking these into sound bites and clear points, but watch how all 100 clues tie together, and this series will blow you away. Thank you for watching 100 Clues. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the bell and like us on our new Facebook, The God Culture Space Original. If you wish to skip ahead, go to the God Culture YouTube channel and watch our Solomon's Gold series in English or Tagalog. Another one coming very soon. There will be a link on the next screen for both. We can know this truth and be confident this belongs to the Philippines, and no one, and I mean no one, can disprove it. Until next time.